The dream of a free trade agreement between ASEAN and its partners is inching closer. But there are still challenges after a round of negotiations on the weekend in Thailand. Its official name is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, otherwise known as RCEP or RCEP. And Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister says that about 80% of those negotiations are now complete. However, the group's trade ministers, they have failed to reach consensus on some key issues. If agreement among the 16 countries involved is finally reached, it would become the biggest free trade alliance in the world. 14 out of 20 issues, such as tariff cuts and IP rights, they have been agreed on. But the trading bloc remains at odds over things like e-commerce and foreign investment. And no joint statements have yet been issued. Negotiators will meet twice more this month to try to work out those sticking points so that leaders can announce a deal early next month at the ASEAN summit. That is the hope. Now, for more, we're joined by Associate Professor Tan Khee Giap. He is co-director of the Asia Competitiveness Institute at the Kuan School of Public Policy. Professor, welcome to the studios this evening. Good to see you. Okay, so positions are now narrowing. Are you optimistic that member countries can come to a consensus, can come to a good agreement by the end of the year, as has been hoped?
Yes, I should think so. We are at the last final mile, and perhaps we can then start signing it next year if we have a conclusion by the end of November. And big hurdles like India look promising. They are about to cut between 74 to 80% of the product import from China, either reduce or eliminate custom tariffs.
So let's look a bit more closely at those sticking points that, that we know are still there. Specifically, we'll talk about India in a minute, but e-commerce, for example, foreign investment, these are some things that haven't been agreed on. What are the hurdles to these?
Well, e-commerce, quite a number of countries at different stages of development, perhaps they are not ready. We are not too surprised by that. But in terms of foreign direct investment, I think with this protectionism and the worry about loss of job, but I would have thought this is a window of opportunities that ASEAN must capitalize on, because there are many, many companies from mainland China, because of the US-China trade friction, they're moving to ASEAN.
Yes.
So I think we should get ourselves ready, and I think this RCEP will just do that.
Yes.
To enhance the investment in ASEAN.
Standardizing certain sort of policies and so on to do with e-commerce would certainly go a long way to helping. The potential is huge after all. But let's go back to this point of India, which is a big sticking point. India specifically has raised concerns about dumping from China, for example, and for specific sectors too. There have been some safeguards that have been suggested. Why is India still holding out in this way?
Well, India has been one of the most protective countries in the world. Speak very much like what the United States is saying now. But I think you look at India, they have this auto-trigger mechanism. Should the dumping come from China, they have the option to increase the tariff again. But I think we are seeing promising signs that even about 86 to 90% of the product from ASEAN or New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Korea will be reduced by India. But of course, that may take over different years to implement. But of course, I think we are very encouraged to see the last chapter recently being concluded. There's a freedom or mobility of human resources. Now, India wants this to be very mobile because the Indian professionals.
Yes.
So they are compromised, they are give and take here. And I feel quite assured that India is now more outward-looking, and we should expect a better deal from India on this RCEP.
But the issue for India may be the domestic voices which very fiercely oppose RCEP. What the government does to quell those, remains to be seen. But if successful, you talked about this a little bit just now, what will be the impact for ASEAN nations, for this region, if this deal is concluded?
You see, because of the US-China trade frictions, we are seeing, in fact, I'm having dinner with one of the big multinationals from China relocating to Vietnam, so I think this really is an opportunity for Indonesia as well, for Thailand, for Malaysia. So can we do that and make our infrastructure development maybe a bit faster to get ready for this foreign direct investment come in? So I think ASEAN need the extra. And ASEAN is the backyard of China. China should take this opportunity, including Korea and Japan were having trade dispute. If they can have some kind of understanding through RCEP, that might be good. And ASEAN, China, Korea, and Japan could work very closely together.
Yes.
Now that we all these tariff imposed by the US to the Chinese, then ASEAN become a very viable place.
Yes, perhaps now more than ever, we really do need a free trade agreement of this dimension. Let's talk very quickly about China, the largest economy in Asia. It has been very eager to conclude RCEP. It is, of course, one of the biggest players. What's the significance of China showing the world its commitment to open markets now?
Well, China cannot be double standard, right? You enjoy globalization, you must open up your market. So there is this export to facilitate import into China. China will also promise to open up finance, banking, insurance, services. So I think in that sense, and China can also take this opportunity to shift some of this export from the United States, but to other parts of the world. But first, you must do as what you say, have open trade, and your doors should open bigger, not expecting just other people to open their door. I think this is something the Chinese are learning a hard lesson.
Well, we have a few more meetings by these negotiators to get through before we get to a final agreement, and we shall see if and when that happens. Professor Tan, thank you very much for coming into the studios to discuss this with me. I've been speaking there to Associate Professor Tan Khee Giap from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy.